Hey everybody, I'm John. I collect cards. It is the first days of December here, so it's feels like winter out here in Southwest Michigan, even though it's officially a couple weeks away. But earlier this week I was thinking about next summer, July 2023. I reserved my hotel room in Chicago for next year's national, and it'll be my first one. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've been to big card shows, back 30 years ago or more, but not national big. So that'll be fun to do. Looking forward to it. But I also, on this video, I wanted to mention that, but also talk about a couple of goals in vintage, small ones really, that I'm, pursuing here or thinking about pursuing in the weeks and months to come. So I'll flip the phone around and talk about it a bit. All right, so I mentioned I had a couple of new goals that I think for vintage that I'm kind of interested in pursuing, and the thing I like about them is that they're not big goals; they're just a few cards here and there. So of just an interesting kind of I'll get to it in a second, I guess. So in terms of the second kind of goal I have, which involves kind of like lots of cards, but really only a few here and there, and then it kind of all adds up or something. But so the first goal I have happens to do with a ball player, manager, and kind of like pop culture figure during his time. I think he's one of the most interesting players or interesting people in baseball history, really. He played for the, you might know who I'm talking about based on what I have up here actually, but he played on the his first year was actually I think he played his first major league game in 1925, but he was on the 1928 World Series champion New York Yankees. So he played with Ruth and Gehrig, and everyone else on that, those amazing Yankees early late 20s kind of Yankees teams. Then he also was a member of the Gas House Gang for the Cardinals. Won a World Series in 1934 and played with them for a few more years. And then he became a big-time manager. And so by that point, you probably know who I'm talking about. So I'm just going to show this card that I picked up. Actually, just got here today. I picked it up off of eBay. And of course, I'm talking about Leo Durocher. I think he's one of the most interesting people in baseball, like spanning the decades. I'm going to move this off to the side a little bit in case it messes up the focus or just sort of reflection. But he's a fascinating figure. Very imperfect person for sure. But at the same time, I have Ron Santos' card up here from 71 Topps. These two almost came to blows while Durocher was managing the Cubs late in his career. But it's just, I think that was in 1969, actually, during the, kind of their collapse. But before that, that was his, not even his final team that he managed, but the Cubs were, abysmal in the mid 60s, and just like he did with his other teams, the Giants, the Dodgers before that, in the 40s, and then the Giants in the 50s, of course. He made teams better. I mean, I'm a Billy Martin fan. I don't PC Martin so much, but he's another. He might be more imperfect than Leo Durocher was, actually, but the guy won. During my first favorite baseball team, the late 70s Yankees, he was their manager, until he got fired for the first of 4 or 5 times. But he's just another one of those. Baseball has those figures who are, maybe kind of, not perfect off the field and not perfect on it either, but they have a history of winning and just kind of, love the game so much that they make their impact that way. And for some reason, I find those kinds of, like those two figures anyway, I find them appealing in that way. And I'm not sure why. But Durocher, I think, is just underrated in that regard. I mean, he played with Ruth and Gehrig. He managed Ron Santo. He managed the Astros for 2 years after the Cubs in the mid 70s. He spans like 50, 60 years of like big time, like historical, all time historical stuff in the game, which to me is fascinating. He managed the Giants for the shot heard around the world. He got a 51 pennant. Bobby Thompson. You know, managed Willie Mays and the Giants to a world championship in 1954. This is 54 tops, of course. And this card here is 1953 Bowman color. It's a really cool card. I like it a lot. And so my little goal with Durocher is I want to have just 3 nice cards of him. And I'd love to have them in collector grade for each one. So this is a 1953 Bowman color. I'm going to send this off for grading sometime early next year. Perhaps even the first next submission I do, which probably isn't going to be until at least January. But my hope is that it'll come back a 5 at least, and I think it's got a decent chance at that. So I'd love for this to be a 5, and if it's not, so be it. But I want to get 2 other cards of his. I want his 1971 Topps card, because I think it's just a really cool shot of him, actually. And the Cubs, I'd say the Cubs, the Giants, and then the Dodgers are the 3 main teams that he's known for managing. Even though the Astros were his last team he managed in the bigs, I'm really looking for those cards. But so I'm interested in a 71 card, and I'd love to find it in a 7 because it would be a challenge, to find it in a 7 at like, a halfway decent price. So, we'll see if that can work. And then I'd love to get his 1933 Gowdy. And I'm going to segue back to the National here a bit. Like that's going to be a goal of mine. I'm going to look to find like one of a few goals next summer, 9 months away. Still holding it by the corner here. 9 months away, whatever it is, 8 months away. I'm going to look to try to pick up a 1933. I'm sure I'll find some. I'm sure there'll be several there, maybe even many. I'd love to find a 1933 Gowdy of from that classic set of Leo Durocher, and I'd love to find it in a 3. So we'll see. If the budget even allows for that, or if I find it, or find one I just happen to like. But we'll see. That could be a naive goal, but I don't think it is. I'm sure there'll be a number of examples of that. So we'll see. It's just a cool little 3-card goal that I have in mind that I'd like to pursue, that I think would span his kind of career in the game pretty well, represented through 3 classic sets as well. 33 Gowdy, 53 Bowman color, 71 Topps. Again, the guy he made an impact in baseball, and obviously that impact continues. Nice guys finish last is not the exact quote that he used to describe ball players, but it's loosely accurate, but it's not 100% accurate, which he admits himself, I think, in his own autobiography. He talked about it, I believe. And actually it's something I need to read at some point. And even just like read his Wikipedia page if you never have. It's just, again, the players he played with and managed, he was the manager of the 1947 Dodgers before he got suspended for the 1947 season because of huge run-ins he had with Happy Chandler, the commissioner, and Durocher was involved in gambling kinds of things, and just, again, lots of unsavory stuff, or a fair amount of it. But that in the game is obviously and I think it was more like accusations flying or something like that. But he was a prolific card player in the clubhouse apparently, and so. Without me being inaccurate, kind of like sharing like beats, but he got suspended for the 47th season. But before that, in spring training that year, he defended Jackie Robinson, breaking the color line, and basically saying, he's playing him, and if you don't want to be around for that, goodbye. So it was that was a pretty important little moment that he had for that as well. So just really interesting, a really interesting baseball guy. So I'm drawn to him for some reason. Imperfections and all. So that's one little goal I have. But on top of that, another little goal I'm going to pursue in vintage. And if you're still listening to this, I appreciate it because I know I'm kind of rambling. I like the idea of. I've had the idea of maybe like classic baseball. And tell me what you think of this idea, if you want. But kind of classic baseball moments captured like the two people involved, like so, like kind of like classic pairs in baseball history. Like, if you think Hank Aaron, what might you think? I think of Al Downing, the pitcher who, gave up home run number 715. Or, let's see if I can think of another one. I had a few off the top of my head, and now, of course, my mind's blocking as maybe like Joe Carter, Mitch Williams, even though it's just, that's maybe not top tier kind of example, but a very interesting example in that like people know who threw or Bobby Thompson, Ralph Branca, like classic kind of pairs, and maybe just, even if like the pitcher in most of those cases, maybe served up a famous hit, and maybe it would be, even to have like, a graded card of each of those from that year to kind of like, kind of crystallize that moment in my collection. It's something I'm thinking about doing. Bucky Dent, I think Mike Torres gave it up. I think Torres was still in the game when Bucky Dent hit the home run 78 against Boston. So it's like, that. Or heck, why don't you go Mookie Wilson, Bob Stanley, or Mookie Wilson, Bill Buckner? Just things like that. That could be interesting and a little fun road to go down. Of course, I'd want more vintage types of stuff there. So, but anyway, it's just some thoughts I have there as I booked my national hotel this week. So, looking forward to that already. Again, months away, of course, but and I haven't bought my actual show tickets yet, but that's something I'll do. I'm not exactly sure how many days I'll be there yet. Right now, I'm probably going to be there for probably parts of 3 days. I booked 2 nights and at one of the nearby hotels, and we'll see. But looking forward to it, and drop in the comments any interesting thoughts you might have about if you have any interesting new kind of ideas for vintage collecting. I'd be curious to know, because once I finished the 54 set this year, incredibly didn't think it was ever going to happen, and through a minor miracle it did happen. And now I'm sort of like, I'm buying some vintage here and there a little bit, but it's like I'd love to have a some sense of direction, so to speak. So those are two things that I'm going to sort of go down the road of a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. So, and that's about it from here for today. Hope you're doing well, and take care. See you on the next video.